Hi, and welcome to the K8s Infra meeting. We are February 15. So just a reminder that this meeting is under the COVID conduct, going to be recorded and will publish on YouTube later. So I invite everyone in this call to be mindful and respectful of each other. So please, I will put the link of the docs in the Zoom chat for anyone new. And first thing, do we have a note taker?
I can do notes.
Okay, thank you, Ipi. Let me see, we can go there. Oops. First order of business, we have new people in the call that want to introduce themselves. Okay, we have no one. Okay, so we can go directly to the billing review. This time I'm gonna do three things here. Mostly two things, like go over GCP costs and go over the AWS costs. And we can see trying to see if we can basically change the way we do billing report between two cloud providers. So first change we can notice is basically the fact that thanks to Ben, we flip the traffic from Artifact registry to S3. We can notice that in the daily cost. Like currently this page is not enough to show this, so I'm going to filter by oops.
You can see it pretty well in the overall cost trend on the GCP billing page. Let me see if I can figure out how to share that.
Yeah, I'm trying to show that now. Is it big enough for people to see? Okay, so since February 9, we have I would say a reduction of cost related to Artifact registry, because before that date we were serving container image for basically IP from non-AWS IPs. Now we flip the cost to S3, and we see basically a reduction of cost. I think when basically we went from 200 and it's growing again, so we need to monitor that closely. Maybe we can, I think by in 2 weeks, which is end of the month, we will see the impact monthly. And if I go over the cost explorer for AWS, we see basically since that date here, we see basically cost increasing because we now serve all the blobs here from S3 by default. Basically, yeah, February 11, I think that's weekend. Yeah, that's the weekend. We don't have a lot of consumption there, and Monday, Tuesday, we're back to normal traffic. And I would say this is the new normal for us. And we see like on the right, basically what's remaining from the GCP budget. Any question?
Cheers to Ben.
Yeah, cheers to Ben.
Okay, yeah, I think never mind. I was gonna say it's a little bit confusing because it's still showing that there's 3,000 or 3.7 mil, even though the 0.7 portion is from the like extra credits from the end of last year, which are expired. But I think the total remaining credits number is still correct. Based on 3 mil minus the spend so far. Oh yeah, that's just. I think it's a little bit easier to see there. The green, you can see the green bar has shrunk a bunch. That green bar is artifact registry.
Yeah, basically,
That's one of the
so
views on the other page.
yeah, so basically both things say the same. Both images say the same things.
I'm
Any-
hoping that's something like a 200K savings if we don't have anything else change in the trend, but that's still pretty far from what we need.
Okay. Any questions regarding billing?
Let me ask one question here. So last year we did, we ended up doing some analysis of logs and things like that, right? Do we want to do one this year, and when do we do it?
Logs? What do you mean logs?
Looking through logs for who's accessing from which IP, those kinds of things we ended up analyzing, right? To figure out like who's pulling the images and from where.
Oh yeah, okay. So just to rephrase what Tim said, like last year we spent basically CNCF/I did an exercise to identify where the cost traffic coming the most, and we realized that was basically AWS at some point. This year, I don't think we need that because now we basically, thanks to the logic in the OCI proxy, we basically shift the traffic based on the IP addresses.
But we do have folks that are still pulling off of the older K8s GCR.io, right?
Yeah, but we're gonna basically, because we have now traffic spent between two endpoints, it's gonna be difficult to reconcile that, because basically we lost the capability to do analysis using H5 registry because it's an opaque system and we don't have the log for that.
If we re-increase the logging on the proxy, then it's possible to derive this information from the logs. I guess the question I'd have is, what new information would we gain that helps us solve a problem as opposed to just being interesting?
I guess we'll still. Good question.
Like, we have a pretty good idea, the approximate breakdown of like which clouds pull Kubernetes images from the previous analysis. I don't think that's going to have massively changed, so I'm not sure that we'd have to retool to read from the new logs, and I'm not sure how essential that is. If it is, though, we shut down some of that stuff because it's actually reasonably expensive to be constantly doing this large analysis.
Right. Yeah, the reason for probably asking that question is, to see how much, like, we've been trying to like change our code, and we've been trying to tell people to switch registries and all that, right? Like, is any of the actually effective or not? Was the curiosity.
I think you can't directly correlate those, because like, say we change a tool like K8s to start referencing the new registry, the impact depends on when users pick up the new tool, right?
Correct.
And that we don't have that granularity of information. Clients don't tell us anything more than this is containerd 1.x and I'm pulling this image from this IP. It doesn't tell us what tool they're using. So even if we collected literally all possible data from the incoming requests, you can't tie them back to
same
making
situation
changes
as
to
before.
tools.
Okay, so the amount of available information, even if we did that exercise, is not going to be very useful. So let's.
Right. We currently don't even collect all that information because we also want to avoid excessive PII. But even if you logged the entire incoming request, it just doesn't have information like what tool is doing it beyond the container runtime.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Any other question?
I know you said it in chat, but Bob was asking if it was possible to get a breakdown of what images were pulled, mainly to look at which Kubernetes versions are being actively pulled.
Yeah,
versus the Datadog report.
I mean, that sounds interesting. I'm not sure how it, like, what we can actually do with it though.
But unless we introduce a new way to basically telemetry in Kubernetes, I don't think there's an easy way to do that.
Well, we could look at like we could identify certain images and look at which tags are most popular. It's theoretically possible to implement something that says this is the Kubernetes versions that are most pulled. I'm not sure that it's gonna help though. Like, we just want to push all users to move as soon as possible across versions.
Understood. I think we can't get out of this. Well, the only other thing we can talk about here is like, could we start looking at the billing report for AWS also, or no?
Yeah, that's what I open here.
Okay.
So I think we see it grow in the cost because of the flip, and over the different months we're gonna have more things because we're gonna have, once we flip artifact.k style to S3, we're gonna basically see cost growing again.
Okay, thank you.
Most of the cost is related to S3 at the moment. So I think we are in the early days of using AWS. We will see other costs related to operation and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other question?
I have one.
Yeah.
So when we have money in our budget, it would probably be a good idea to punch the load balancer logs and stuff sitting in our buckets to approximate how much of image X was pulled by this particular user agent, for example, so we can kind of get an idea of how many images of something was pulled, for example.
Okay, is it a question or a suggestion?
No, we should, like when we have space in our budget to gather analytics of like what's
But what are you
used in our
going to do with
registries.
that information? Because that
I don't know,
information is going to tell you like containerd 1.6 is the most popular client or something, and that doesn't tell us what cluster, like your type of cluster you're using or anything like that. We can tell you what we can find out something like what cloud you're probably in or what container runtime version you're using.
You can approximate the Kubernetes version that you're running based on, for example, the images pulled like when kubeadm or things like the cloud control managers are pulled.
Sure, but what will you do with knowing which Kubernetes versions are most popular?
I don't know, stick in a first party report. I think it's something that we should do, right?
Okay, assuming basically we get that information and we realize, for example, basically Kubernetes 120 is the most Kubernetes cluster installed there. What we're gonna do about that? Knowing that it's deprecated, it's not maintained anymore, but we still have people using Kubernetes 120. What we're gonna do about that?
I don't know what you're gonna do with the information. What I'm saying is, it would be great if first party, as it us, who host the infrastructure, are able to release a report that says, "Oh, we run a container registry, and this is what we are pulling, and these are all the Kubernetes versions we think people are using over a particular period."
Okay, so
I mean, it's not useful right now, Jeff, but something we should crunch when we have money left.
I think we're so far off from having spare money that things that are just interesting but not essential are not something we should really be worried about.
I agree.
So there's an issue related to that somewhere. We just need to keep that issue close. And when we are ready to make implementation of that, we can come back to that.
Our past experience also is that this is, while curious, it is reasonably expensive to process all of the incoming requests for this.
On GCP, not on AWS. Because by default now we serve from S3, and we can basically have access log on those S3 bucket and process them in AWS. We have the budget for that.
It will give some approximation for the moment, assuming that we don't wind up adding other hosts later. It's still an expensive thing to be continuing to do. Presumably at some point we'll do other useful things with the AWS spend.
Yeah.
I think that the expense is not super great relative to the like actual usefulness of it.
Okay.
There's a comment in there's a comment in the text about age out policy. That's an interesting angle.
Okay. We can resume the conversation by trying to define what's the use of those basically all the data we collect from image pooling, and we can have a separate conversation about what we want to do with this information later. Okay, I'm gonna proceed with the rest. Okay, analysis. AI review. That's new. So I will give the mic to Justin.
Thank you. Hello. This is a new section where we thought we'd just quickly go over the various projects, and someone edited this. I put in a link to a Jiffy edit, I guess. I put a link to a very GitHub project board Kanban thing. I don't know, but yeah, it seems to be like, yeah, quite cool. Actually quite easy to use. So from an engineering point of view, I was like quite pleased with that. It made me feel like I was a PM. And we are doing okay, I think, on moving everything over. I think basically everything is stood up. We have a sandbox environment, artifacts-sandbox.k8s.io. It's redirecting to some AWS buckets, and those are also fronted by CloudFront as sort of a fallback, fronted by Cloud Run. We have all of that same infrastructure also stood up in prod. The last piece we have to do is actually cut over the artifacts.k8s.io DNS name so that we actually serve prod traffic. The sphere, or we believe we will take between 15 and 30 minutes of downtime because we can't get a TLS certificate until we cut over the DNS, we believe. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way around this. And so once we cut over the DNS, then it will try to require the certificate. That will take about 15 to 30 minutes, but we will not be serving in that time. It's probably not a deal blocker. There isn't that much currently on artifacts.k8s.io. There is a way around. But anyway, that is where we are. And so the next step is basically to cut over. I'm trying to track down internally whether there's a better way. And Mohammed, do you want to? You said there's a way around.
Yeah. All right, manually creating your TLS certificate when you have control of your DNS domain is pretty straightforward. We do it all the time on a quick stand-up where you use the certbot CLI and specify the domains you want to use, and it tells you the text records, and you could submit those via the k8s.io repository for, I think we use Octo DNS.
Something.
Yep, it's manual, but it'll get us there, and you'll have that cert. You can do it now, not to wait.
Okay.
There is a much easier way, right? So for a long time, you couldn't create wildcard managed certificates, but nowadays you can. You're just going to use certificate manager on GCP and basically figure some DNS records, and then you should get a managed wild cert from Google to use.
That's kind of what I'm referring to, is that you do get a wildcard cert when you do that approach using even just the CLI. Fine, it's just getting those TLS records, text records from cert manager in there.
Okay, I can probably try that, I guess. Is that people? Well, we can. Is that what people want me to do? Doesn't sound too hard.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm saying you can do it in Terraform. So there's a bunch of Terraform code out there. Just stick it in, get the DNS record stood up, and then you should have a cert that you can stick to the browser.
I think there's like a technical detail on how we do basically the flip. We can take that on Slack and trying to figure out later, basically together, how we can make that simple for Justin. There's like, we can have a maintenance window and say, oh, Artifact Orchestra is down for 1 hour. I'm fine with that. So I don't think there's too much to worry about here. Is there like anything else?
I like Slack.
Okay. Next is the registry. Do we want to go over this, Chiefy?
I think we kind of already did with Ben's cutover. So really that was it. I linked to his thing saying he flipped it. But...
Okay. So we'll call this done.
I wouldn't say registry.k8s.io is necessarily done. I still think there's different things that we could try and do to minimize costs, but the latest update, like in terms of initiatives and things we're trying to work towards, registry.k8s.io, the latest update has been did a bunch of, I don't know, voodoo magic, we'll call it. And you'll hate me for calling it that, but it did work, reduce costs current.
In terms of reducing costs, there's not a lot left. The biggest one is just we have to get people to use it. We've offloaded pretty much all bandwidth over to the S3 buckets now. If those become a cost issue, then we may be looking at doing other things. But for now, it appears that is not the case. And on GCP, we have dramatically reduced the cost it costs to run this. I don't think there's a lot of room for improving that. There is still some work happening on the registry to smooth. Mohammed has been working on freezing k8s.gcr.io as part of getting users to move over. Like new images will not be available on k8s.gcr.io, they'll only be on the registry. And we're working on 2 parallel approaches for that. Mohammed has shipped some PRs to bring up another GCR that we use to be able to sync from, but we don't point end users at. And I've been working on a tool to read the contents from Artifact Registry and populate them to S3. So we no longer need to depend on GCR for that step. So we should be pretty close to immediately shipping the intermediate GCR, and we're also getting relatively close to being able to eliminate it, but running those in parallel so that we're not blocked on this release. Kubernetes will not publish images on GCR using one of those 2. Doesn't matter. And that should not pay off in the immediate future, but it's an important step towards ensuring that people really do switch off of GCR, because the images will cease to be available. We started advertising registry.k8s.io in 1.25, but even since then, all content has been dual published. The dual publishing is going to end, and we have a fair bit of work that has been happening to ensure that ships. And I want to thank Mohammed for capturing all that in a cap and driving forward all the work to do the more immediate infra config only approach and get that done. And for working with SIG release on that.
Any question?
I actually have one for Mohammed. Is there anything that you're blocked on again? I took a quick poke at the issues.
The registry was created. It's public, but that can be fixed later. So we need to merge the PR and test infra that backfills it. I think that's a priority right now. So that's going to take a few days to work itself out.
I'll go look at that after the call. Thanks.
That same PR also backfills some new artifact registry locations in the US. We approved last year, but never got around to doing it.
Okay, I think it's just follow up on basically man-made work. So we can follow up on Slack. Anything else?
I think that's it for that topic.
Okay, next, Jiffy, Pro CI.
My name is not Chiefy. I'm Marco, but wearing, a mask. Last I saw, at least when it comes to the main topic of building build clusters, Marco assigned it to himself 5 days ago, and I think he's on the call, so he can update it better than me.
Yeah, hey folks, I have started looking into this. We will go forward with EKS cluster, and I have got access to the accounts where we will be using. And yeah, I'm looking into that. I have 2 days off today or tomorrow, but as of Friday, I will be back to take a look into this to hope to come up something by the end of the week.
Okay. Any question regarding this subject?
Only other thing I will comment on is part of the Prow CI stuff also falls under the proposal, but I figured the proposal we do an open discussion. So that's why they're separate. That's all.
Okay. Okay, next is me. Oh,
Hang on, Arno. So when we say that we're gonna do some stuff on EKS,
yeah.
are we implicitly saying yes, we're gonna use the same pattern we've been using before, using Terraform? Yes. Thanks, Marco.
I want to rephrase the question. I want to give a different answer
Mm-hmm.
for your question. I think for the moment, we don't care about tooling. I think right now, basically, we should not care about tooling. We should basically give room for Marco to quickly bootstrap the AKS cluster, matching the requirement and trying to plug with Prow. And later we focus on tooling.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think right now, Marco, let's not focus on more about configuration management here. If you feel like you want to do that with Rust and we go fast with that, go for it. Right now, it's about use the tool you are comfortable the most with right now, because we want to be fast. This is, for example, a POC. At the moment, it's a POC. It's not something production ready. I don't want something production ready right now. So use the tool you want. Yeah.
Yes or no? I was just asking that question because Justin has been using Terraform, so it's like, okay, let's just stick to it. That's all.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it is just we are trying something out, please go for it.
Yeah.
The main cluster that we're using that's still inside Google is actually from 2016 in Kubernetes 1.4. We almost never need to change the cluster. We need to use the Kubernetes APIs. So anything that gets us to a kubeconfig should be fine. Terraform is nice for visibility, but I think not essential.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the next thing is me. Okay, so currently there's like
Sorry, can we just go back for a second real quick?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I missed the last minute, but all we really need is some Terraform code, and then we patch out the kubeconfig that's used in the Prow control plane, and we should be good to go.
Yeah, I can follow up more on that offline as well. There's a process to add an additional kubeconfig to Prow that we've done before for community generated GKE clusters. We should be able to do more or less the same thing there. You just add basically just a config format that has a name for the cluster and then the like kubeconfig used to access it. It's pretty simple. We'll have to follow up with the Prow on-call team to add that once we have a cluster. I think there'll be other details to actually get jobs running, but we don't necessarily need to go on that right now.
Okay. Can I go for my subject?
Do it.
Okay, so dl.ks.io is kind of in pending for the two reasons. The one is like we'll need TLS certificate from Fastly to ensure we can serve through Fastly cache. right now the configuration is almost ready. So we now require TLS certificate, and that's part of the donation from Fastly. So we, in the agreement we got with Fastly, if I remember, we're supposed to get 60 terabyte monthly plus 5 TLS certificate. And once we got all of this, we can move forward. So this is like pending signature of the service order. And later, we now need to basically decide, I don't think it's decide, basically give a notice to the community. We do a flip on Fastly. It's terabyte AP, not petabyte. So we also need to give a notice to the community. We're gonna flip from pure Google Storage API to a Fastly endpoint, which means we have like some kind of room. We have room to basically do this safely. Or we don't give notice, we flip and people yell at us and come with pitchfork and torch. So we can also do that. But I would like to basically send a communication notice to the community and the downstream.
If you want my move fast, break things opinion, you should give 14 days notice. Give them 2 weeks. Otherwise,
2 weeks.
Otherwise, like there is going to be a point where we're just going to be breaking people anyways. So I feel like in order for us to save money, we should just be aggressive and take a little bit of the heat. I mean,
using Fastly don't save money. It's even the opposite. We're gonna basically burn money by using Fastly.
Couple of things on that. So one to the point just made, yes, that is billed to Google internally currently. So it's a nice to have, but it doesn't help with the public bill.
Yeah.
So in terms of speed, we don't necessarily have to rush. However, I'm kind of against giving a really long notice because I don't want to set some kind of precedent that we're being supportive of depending on this sort of thing. DL.K8s.io is already a community controlled domain that serves a redirect to some kind of storage. If you decide to depend on where it redirects to and resolving that directly or allow listing it or whatever, that was a bad call on your part. We have never ever said you should do that. And unlike the container images, there's a much lower chance of this breaking reasonable production setups overnight. We should just move what it redirects to at will, and we should send a notice. We should consider sending a notice just to try to get people to stop using the GCS bucket, because I've actually found in our own project there are repos that have direct references to the cloud storage bucket, and they should not be doing that. And I'm sure it exists, and we're going to stop pushing things there. So that FYI needs to go out, but I don't think it should block a timeline for when we rotate. Do we know how much bandwidth we're using currently? Has anybody actually pulled that data? Do we know if 60 terabytes is enough? That would be my bigger concern.
We have Googlers in this call, so I'm going to redirect the question to you, because this is basically a Google-owned bucket.
Okay, but you're saying we're going to roll it out, and it sounds like we haven't checked that yet. So I think we need to check that first. I don't think I have access to that. I'm happy to go poke and find someone that does. But it sounds like the answer is no, we haven't checked that, and we really should check that first.
Rollout Fastly don't necessarily imply we're going to be over bandwidth.
Well, if we're consuming 100 terabytes a month now and we only get 60 from Fastly, then we have a problem if we switch.
Not necessarily, because we can increase that bandwidth.
I really think we should make sure that we don't need to do that before we flip.
Yeah, I don't think Fastly wants that either in like the first month that we start putting stuff on them too.
So are we okay? I'm gonna rephrase that directly. Is it possible to get that information from Google?
I will find out. I think I know someone that has access.
Okay.
If that information is available, I think I know someone has access to the project that's hosted in.
Okay. I think that's Googlers in this call to figure out this information. I'm not really worried about basically being over bandwidth. 60 terabyte is like a lot. So I also know, yeah, traffic, looking at the traffic going through the current redirect, I'm not really worried about that. So I'm gonna stick to the 60 days notice, basically, because yeah, it's better to basically make an announcement now, and in the meantime, trying to figure out what the bandwidth we're gonna have.
I still think we can do it quicker than that, but we shouldn't announce if we know that we're not going to have enough bandwidth, because then we just shouldn't do it, and we should find some other use for that credit.
Okay, so we pause this notice for 2 weeks, assuming we get that information in 2 weeks.
I'm hoping to get that information today. I already reached out. I imagine it's either available and it shouldn't take long to get, or we just don't have that information and then we'll YOLO it. But if we have that information, we should, and we find out that we need more than we're getting right now, we should try to renegotiate first.
Okay.
I think my hand's next. You said we could get more. Are we going to put a redirect service in? Are we going to keep a redirect service in front of in front of these downloads, or are we going to just hand over to Fastly? Because I totally agree. Like if we stand up either another porch or the same porch thing, we can like just put Fastly in the mix and send them however much they'll take, or we can. But if we just hand over the thing and then we're sort of stuck, right?
Yeah, currently we use Nginx to do the redirect, so we just change your Nginx configuration to flip to Fastly.
Got it. So we'll keep that. Okay, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, we keep that. Like I think, my concern would be basically, I think, is Nginx enough to handle the traffic we're gonna flip? Because other than that, we also have a lot of things not going through that redirect. Basically, we have a lot of, so in the KK repo, a lot of links going directly to the bucket. I would like to change that to use Fastly. So I think that's my most pressing concern. So anyway.
Wait a second, I have another question. Why don't you delete that bucket after X number of weeks and make a new one? And then see what breaks.
I don't have control on this bucket.
That's a pretty irreversible thing, and I'm actually.
I mean, you can just blank the bucket, right? And empty the bucket and make it useless.
Again, I don't.
Who's supposed to? Who's not? Who's supposed to use the endpoint, but's not really using it.
Yeah, but also to be clear, this is not billed to our 3 million GCP right now, and no one is raising a. Stuff is complicated. No one's raising a really big stink about it right now. It's more of a like, it would be nice to be able to show that we've reduced some other cost whenever we're asking for the overage on the main bill, and because we want to bring everything out of internal projects into community control, but leaving it up is not a big problem. I mean, for example, gcr.io/Google containers has also, we haven't determined shutting that down yet, and it still has some usage. But since it's not on the community bill, it's not as pressing. We have less of a hard cap when it's like when it stays entirely internal to like GKE, as opposed to when we're going external. I don't actually understand why that's the case. That's way above my pay grade, but I know it's the case.
I don't know, maybe you could convince the bean counter to trade the credits around, huh?
I asked about that, and it sounds like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
Yeah, sorry, folks, we derail here. I think basically the consensus around this conversation, like we should try to get the information about bandwidth of this bucket and see what's happening in 2 weeks, because there's a lot of questions I'm not sure I can answer or have the possibility to answer, because this is about Google infrastructure. I'm not a Googler. I don't have control of the infrastructure. I'm doing whatever I can to make sure things happening.
But
depending.
we have Googlers coming to the call for that purpose. Me and Justin and Jago are in the call. Fede will be here usually, but had to miss today.
Yeah, so let's have this interesting conversation about this, trying to get that information and make a final decision in 2 weeks. But to be clear, I'm gonna go with the notice because we need to tell people we're doing that flip. It's not about expectation. It's just about saying to people, oh, there's gonna be an impact on your infrastructure. You need to be careful about this.
Yes, but if you say that it's going to happen in 60 days, that kind of sets a precedent.
Let's say we had other precedent related to infrastructure change. Okay, we can go to open discussion.
The first one is technically Mario, but I did want to spend like a minute to just play the lay of the land. A few things. One, Kubernetes actually been around to help us for about 3 weeks, but I wasn't throwing anything at them for the first 2 because I wanted the SIG to kind of reorganize a little bit and reorganize what initiatives we can kind of put them on. So truly any negative feelings towards Kubernetes having not like started work sooner should be directed directly at me. I will fall on that sword. Second off, there's been kind of a balancing act that we unfortunately have to do between our employers and the community. Hopefully you get what I mean. So for the most part, this proposal is focused on that balance. But like I said to Dims in a Slack thread, ultimately, this proposal does not matter. The only thing that matters is what the community decides is the best path we will support. This is the first pass. Given all of that, I'm on a beach and I feel weird, talking serious stuff. So
Okay, Mario, do you want to take
Yeah,
over?
maybe I can also give some context. What is this proposal and why you find several points in it odd or strange. So Kubernetes was approached by the CNCF to help create a multi-cloud and multi-registry setup for the Kubernetes infrastructure. And we didn't have any idea, or I mean, we had some idea how everything worked, but from our colleagues that are in the community and that are active in the community. But this was also done in regards to what Ben already mentioned, that eventually everything should be moved out of private Google accounts into a potential multi-cloud, multi-vendor setup that has a unified interface to manage everything. And with everything, I mean the Pro clusters that are doing their thing, also creating the test, clusters for end-to-end tests to run for the upcoming versions. So also the life cycle for those clusters and anything that might be coming up in the future for this SIG or this project needs some Kubernetes clusters to run. So the idea behind this was to create like a universal infrastructure that is manageable with as less resources as possible, and also is potentially not utilizing managed services, because a managed Kubernetes class, a managed EKS, AKS, and GKE cluster is in the end more expensive than running EC2 instances. So when we look into the future from like now we're talking about in 5 years, the costs will eventually always go up. And so our approach was, as we are an open source project, and that basically solves this multi-cluster approach and multi-cloud approach. We proposed our own open source tool for this. There were some quick wins that we wanted to achieve, and this is also where we talked to II, and we got your input, and we got the input of Ben, that and we eventually said that, yeah, let's go with the approach in the beginning that everything runs as fast as possible, and we can reduce the cost as fast as possible. But also, and now comes the other business side, the CNCF, or basically Gphy's bosses, said to us, we want to have a long-term solution, and we want to have a long-term solution that might be also could be managed by SREs or companies that basically also donate help in terms of engineering capacity to maintain those infrastructures, because we are facing a lot of uncertainties there. So nobody knows in half a year who is managing the infrastructure in the end. I know the community does a great job in doing this, but I think we can all agree that no one wants to be the person who is called on a Sunday evening at 3 a.m. To fix something that is wrong in the infrastructure. And from this perspective, we came up with the architecture that we proposed. And I understand the feedback, and I mean also Marco already foreseen this, but hopefully this gives some more context onto this whole proposal. Yes, Dims.
So one of the points I was talking to somebody and they made was like, hey, we use Sonoboy and other things from single vendor projects. So that is not the problem here. Whether it is a open source project from here or there, who's working on the open source project, that's not the point. Like Terraform is also an open source project, but the point here is where is the pain currently, and is the pain what is the problem that this tool is trying to solve, and do we actually have that problem? So that is where we have to look at this from. And like, we do have clusters. We end up using whatever is there on the managed Kubernetes side, whether it is GKE or EKS. The thing is, we don't have a problem of, hey, we have to build a cluster and destroy a cluster many times a day or anything of that sort, right? Like Ben was saying, we created a cluster years ago and we are still using it for Pro. So that is not a problem we are trying to solve here, right? So if we want to solve the problem of the CI and how we currently do CI, there is a big problem there, which we haven't even dug into, which is we have a kubub script in the cluster directory, and that is the one that creates all this, all the clusters that we use for testing, right? So that is where we need help to essentially, there is two modes there, right? Like one is pre-submit jobs and post-submit jobs. Pre-submit jobs, we'll need to integrate the stuff in the PR. We need to build all the artifacts and then build a cluster using those artifacts, right? We don't have a good answer for that right now in the community, other than the kubub scripts, and we keep reusing the kubub scripts because we don't have anything else. Even the scalability jobs are heavily dependent on things that are similar to that. So if you want to chase that problem and fix that problem, if the solution that you're coming up with here can solve that problem, I'm all ears, right? Like, I do want to.
So, yeah.
Let me finish that thought. That is a good problem to solve, and that is a long-term problem we've been hitting our head against. And the issue there is, we tried CAPE, right, like CAPE based clusters and stuff. And the issue there is, hey, we can build these artifacts quickly using the make file that we already have, and the problem is we had to put it in an army or whatever image that is there for the specific cloud, and then you have to deploy, right? That is the problem that we are currently having, which is the pre-submit jobs. It's very slow to be able to do that. It might work for the post-submit jobs, but not for the pre-submit jobs. So if we want to chase a problem, that is a problem that I want to go chase, which will make us do well in the longer run, because currently the kubebub scripts doesn't even reflect any of the installers that are out there, right? All of the installers use kubeadm, and the kubebub script doesn't even use kubeadm, just for example. So first we need to identify the problem we are trying to solve, and this is not a problem we are trying to solve. Sorry, I'll yield.
Yeah, so basically the idea was also to exactly duck into this. So to create an environment where quickly the clusters can be tested for the different so that any new pre-submit could be built, tested, and run, and then basically reduced again to ash. The other thing is why we proposed it as a general platform is you could basically manage everything in one platform. And I have the commitment from our development side that they are also willing, and they also have an idea how to solve this. And this would then,
I'm all for it, Mario. Like if you want to dig into that, I will spend time with you all, and we can start working on it like really tomorrow, like, because that has been on my case for a really long time, and that is something that I've been like struggling to find a way to, like, that is a biggest risk that we are carrying right now, because, and we want to make it work across all the clouds, right? We want kubebub scripts that will work across the clouds, so we can run the same things using EC2 instances or the Azure VMs and whatnot. Go ahead, Ben.
I don't think we're talking about the same thing here.
Wait.
I know, Ben. I know we are not talking about the same. Yes.
So sorry, folks. We have 3 minutes left, so I think we need to basically pause this and maybe have a Slack conversation, or maybe in next week in the LBX meeting. We have 3 minutes to cover 2 other subjects. I would like to go through them. Really sorry. EP.
I'll just go really fast. One of the things we're going to need to be able to understand our Kubernetes costings is to have an architecture, understand the architecture for deploying it. The multi-cluster POC that I'm working on, I'm going to need to bring up a primary kube cost cluster that has AWS IAMs to reach the S3 buckets for writing the data to, and in cooperation with Kubernetes, understanding how we're going to deploy not just to the clusters that we create on the fly, so we can have that information available. Just wanted to quickly put that out there as I'm trying to do the POC.
Okay, so I think we can go with having all of this in AWS. I think that's fine.
Yep. It's part of it's the account that we want to put it in, because we need to have IAM access, not the one for the writing, but we need to have access to the billing. And so making sure that where we put the primary cluster has access to the billing for the consolidation. We can dig a bit further in that. There's probably, it's not enough time right now, but we should probably loop back around and make sure that we create it in the right place and give the right AWS permissions for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kubecast is already integrated, so it should not be a problem, right? Like we can create a EKS cluster for running the Kubecast and essentially plug in whatever you want there, Hippie.
Cool.
Just okay. So just to be clear about this, the one thing like we exclude GCP from the scope of this POC / deployment of Kubecast because that might trigger costs on GCP. I don't want that at the moment. And the second thing is like if you need to have access to the global cost of the AWS organization, we might need to do something about this.
So make sure I hear you clearly, Arno.
Yeah.
No GCP for now, and if we need GCP global cost in the future.
No,
or
if we need no, if you need access to the AWS organization billing data, we need to do something. We need to basically have a separate configuration for this.
Yep, I think we will. I'm working with the Kubecast team to identify exactly what that needs to look like.
Okay. We have a time by 1 minute. We have Ricardo, only 1 minute for you.
Okay, I will be really fast. So this is an issue I have raised in, I guess, 2 months ago. I have this discussion already with Arno on FOSDEM. Mohammed chimed in on that, giving some good ideas. I just wanted to bring this up again because as a project and for Ingress in Nginx, we've been trying to kind of offload the usage that we have from Pro, even for the cloud build and bringing all of those things to GitHub and just using Pro infrastructure for promotion, mostly because it would be easier for us to manage the branches and other things and the releases. So we don't have release managers and all of those people doing all of the automations on Pro. So I have discussed it with the community, and I would just like folks that you take a look into that, and if we can maybe be the first one with this approach.
I would say I think I'm +1 or capability to give a sub project to use GitHub Action to push image to the staging registry. Now I think there's like I don't know if the GitHub admin team need to give the approval on this. I think that's the one thing. Like for me, K8s Infra, I'm fine with that. We can try to basically do that for all the staging repo. Make sure each staging project have the possibility to basically push image from GitHub. Now there's also a conversation with the GitHub admin team. We might need a +1. So trying to bring this to them and see what's happening. From my side, K8s Infra, I think I'm +1.
Okay, I will bring this to Slack to them.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay,
so we are really out of time. Thank you everyone for coming, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.